My name is Kevin, and I'm 44 years old, a staff sergeant serving with the 101st Airborne. I had been stationed in Herat province for 4 months when I received the divorce papers via email. After 13 years of marriage, it ended abruptly in a PDF attachment. The subject line of her message read, "Let's handle this like adults." The email itself was all of 3 sentences. Amy, my wife, had already filed for divorce. She had already drained our joint account. She had already moved her new boyfriend, Brian, into our home in Fresno. I read her note twice, closed my laptop, took a quick shower in the communal stall, got into my uniform for my shift, and told nobody. When I returned to my bunk that evening, I replied to her email with just one word: noted. That was it. No arguments, no pleading, no threats. Johnson, my bunkmate, could tell something was off. "Everything okay, man?" he asked, not even looking up from his magazine. "Yeah," I said quietly. "Just some stuff back home." He nodded and let it drop. Soldiers learn to give each other space when needed. The truth is, I wasn't entirely shocked. About 6 months before deployment, little things started to change. Amy stopped asking about my day, started staying late at the dental clinic where she worked admin, began going to the gym 3 times a week but never seemed to sweat. She bought new clothes, mentioned new friends I never met, and put new passwords on her phone. I didn't challenge her on it. I'm not the type to snoop in messages or follow someone around. But I'm not blind either, so I quietly made plans of my own. Nothing dramatic, just security measures. I stored important documents in a rental storage unit across town. Birth certificate, marriage license, the deed to our house, which was in my name thanks to the VA loan, and all my military benefits paperwork. I also placed my grandfather's watch and my mom's old silver in that same unit, things that mattered to me. Then I opened a separate bank account at a different institution, redirecting part of my pay there. I made sure it wasn't enough to be glaring, but just enough so I wouldn't be at zero if the worst happened. The night before I shipped out, she hugged me at the airport and said, "Stay safe, okay?" Her eyes were dry, like she was saying goodbye to a casual acquaintance instead of a husband leaving for a combat zone. I should have taken the hint, but a piece of me still hoped my suspicions were wrong. They weren't. What Amy didn't realize was that I had taken steps to prepare for exactly this scenario. And what she never understood about me was that although I'm not one to start fights, I will absolutely finish them. Amy and I met at a friend's backyard barbecue in 2010. I was briefly back home between tours, crashing at my buddy Andrew's place in Fresno. She was in nursing school initially, but ended up working as a dental office administrator. Less stress, she'd say. We got married 8 months after we met. Amy always claimed to be proud of my service, but she never really grasped the life. Her dad was a regional bank manager. Her brother was a pharmacist, no military background at all. More than once, she asked when I'd get a real job, not understanding that after 15 years of service, the Army was my actual career, not a placeholder. We bought our house in 2014, nothing extravagant but ours. 3 bedrooms, a modest yard, a quiet neighborhood. Because of the VA loan, the mortgage was in my name alone, but I added Amy to the deed. Married couples are supposed to share these things after all. My father passed away a year after our wedding. Heart attack while shoveling snow, and my mother died 3 years later from lung cancer, though she had never smoked. They left me some money, not a fortune, but enough to clear our student loans and keep a financial cushion. I deployed 4 times during our marriage, twice to Iraq, twice to Afghanistan. After each tour, it felt like Amy was a bit more distant, more restless, like she was living a life she'd outgrown. "I didn't sign up to be a military wife," she once said after I mentioned re-enlisting for another 4 years. "I'm tired of feeling alone." I got it. But the Army was where I belonged and I was good at my job. People relied on me. Around 2019, the subtle changes became more obvious. Amy seemed annoyed when I called during her nights out, started bringing up how her newly divorced friend Melissa was living her best life, hinted that we no longer had much in common. I brought up the possibility of marriage counseling. She insisted we were fine, just going through a phase. Then there were new clothes, weekends away with friends I'd never met, and that gym membership she barely used. I should have confronted her, but that's never been my approach. My dad taught me to think carefully and confirm your facts before acting. So I waited, watched, and quietly made preparations, trusting my instincts that something was definitely brewing. 2 weeks after the divorce email arrived, I was in the mess hall when I got a notification from our bank app. A withdrawal of $88,500. Almost all that remained. I set my fork down and opened the app. Our joint account balance was at $22.37. Our savings, which had about $47,000, was entirely wiped out. All of it had been transferred to some unknown account. Murphy, another soldier in my unit, gave me a quick glance. "Bad news?" he asked. I locked my phone. "Nah, just financial stuff." That night, I called our bank from the base's phone center. Turns out Amy had been transferring money regularly. Small amounts at first, then bigger lumps. The biggest moves started right after I deployed. I hung up, stood in the corridor, and watched guys laughing, talking to their kids, parents, wives. Just normal life. Mine was crumbling around me. Johnson found me there, hearing from Alvarez that I seemed off at dinner. "What's going on?" I trust Johnson. He once saved me from a bad spot in Helmand. So I told him. My wife drained our accounts, moved her boyfriend into our house, and emailed me divorce papers while I was out on patrol. He didn't give me the usual, "That's rough," or "I'm sorry, man." He just asked, "What's your plan?" "I'm not sure," I said. He nodded. "Let me know if you need backup." That night, I couldn't sleep. I opened my laptop and logged into our home security system, which Amy had probably forgotten I could access. There, on the camera footage, I saw a strange truck in our driveway and a guy I'd never seen walking my dog, using my favorite coffee mug, and wearing my football sweatshirt. And there was Amy, laughing in the kitchen I had renovated myself on my last leave. Something inside me shifted, less anger than a cold, methodical clarity. I shut the laptop and started a list on my phone. 1. Call Robert, my Army buddy who became a lawyer. 2. Check VA loan terms. 3. Talk to my Master Sergeant about an emergency leave. 4. Review old home refinance documents Amy had mentioned a while back. 5. Ensure my military pension accounts are secure. I didn't feel sadness anymore, and not even pure anger, more like focus, like I was planning an operation. At 0500, before my shift, I emailed Robert. Subject line, "Need legal help, discreet and urgent." He replied an hour later, "Call me via secure line." When I finished that call, I knew exactly what to do. I didn't need to yell or threaten. I just needed to let her own actions set the trap. 2 months later, I was back stateside. I didn't warn Amy. I got a motel in a downtown Fresno under a different name and then reached out to Robert. We met at a diner on the outskirts of town. "You look exhausted," he said. "Feels that way," I admitted. He handed me a folder. Everything we discussed, deed, bank records, loan documents, also this. He slid me another sheet. It was a refinance application with my supposed signature, except it wasn't mine. The middle initial was incorrect and the handwriting was off. "Amy did this?" I asked, though I basically knew the answer. He nodded. 3 months ago, pulling out $330,000 in equity. Your signature was required since it was a VA loan in your name only. Forge my signature, take out a loan against our house, then clean out our accounts and divorce me. Busy lady, I said. It gets crazier, Robert added, placing another page in front of me. She listed Brian, her boyfriend, as a co-applicant. He's got a criminal record, 2 DUIs and a fraud conviction from 2019. I let out a long breath. What are my options? Plenty, Robert answered. But first, decide what you really want. I paused. I want what's rightfully mine, and I want her to understand that there are consequences. Robert gave a small grin. Then, here's the game plan. The next day, I drove by our house. Brian's truck was gone, but Amy's car was in the driveway. I parked down the street and watched. Part of me wanted to walk up and confront her, but that wasn't the plan. Instead, I went to the bank and met with the loan officer who had handled the fraudulent refinance. I showed my military ID, my real signature on my driver's license, and then the forged documents. He went pale. "I'll have to report this immediately." "I understand," I said calmly. "I've already filed a police report." That evening, I got a text from Amy. "Who have you been talking to at the bank? Brian said someone was asking questions." I didn't answer. 2 days later, I visited the county clerk's office and filed paperwork contesting the refinance due to fraud, with a formal notice that no property changes could be made without me there. That same evening, Amy called me and I let it go to voicemail. "Kevin, we need to talk. The bank's saying something about fraud, and Brian got pulled over driving your truck. I don't understand what's happening. If this is about the divorce, can we please discuss it calmly? Like adults." The same phrasing from her email. I still didn't respond. Robert phoned that afternoon. "They've frozen the refinance money. Another thing. Your wife's boyfriend got stopped driving your truck. His license is still suspended from those DUIs. The truck's in impound now." "Good," I said flatly. "He also had some suspicious items in the vehicle. Prescription pads from the dental office where Amy works. Not blank either." I closed my eyes. "She's stealing prescription pads?" "So it appears. Police are investigating." I hung up and sat on the edge of my motel bed, realizing this was bigger than I'd thought. Part of me was tempted to warn her out of old habit, but then I remembered that security footage. My dog, my belongings, my house, all turned into background scenery for someone else's life. No, I was on this course now, and I wasn't about to let up. The next morning, I met a fraud investigator from the bank, a man named Thompson. He looked worn out, with a coffee stain on his tie. "You'd be surprised how often we see this," he said, laying out the documents. "One spouse's deployment can be the other spouse's opportunity." "What happens now?" "We've frozen the fraudulent refinance, but there's a snag. Some of the money is already gone." "How much?" "Close to half. Around $14,600. I leaned forward. "Where did it go?" He looked hesitant. "I'm really not supposed to share that. It's my house, my name forged, my money missing." He nodded, then swiveled his computer screen in my direction. "These are the withdrawals from the refinance account." The list showed multiple transfers to someone called Mark Atkins, not Brian, another name entirely. "Who's Mark Atkins?" I asked. "No idea," Thompson said. "But ask your lawyer about subpoenaing these records." I called Robert. "Mark Atkins." He called me back within an hour. "He's a realtor specializing in quick sales, mostly cash deals." "She was planning to sell our house?" I asked, a chill going through me. "Seems so. The deposits might be for earnest money to get the listing going," Robert said. "Here's another piece. Atkins has done business with Brian in the past. They've closed at least 3 real estate deals together in the last 2 years. My brain spun. This wasn't just a matter of Amy leaving me for some other guy. This looked like a plan. So, is this some organized scam? Could be, Robert answered carefully. I did some digging on Brian. There's a pattern. He targets women who are divorcing or have spouses deployed. Each time, the property sells way below market value to one of Atkins' associates. Brian gets a cut, then moves on. And Amy? I asked. Is she a victim, or is she involved? Hard to say, he admitted. She might be in over her head, or she could be complicit. I pressed my hand against my forehead. This was bigger than just me being betrayed. It was a systematic operation that preyed on military families. What do we do? I've contacted the FBI's Financial Crimes Division, Robert said. They're very interested, especially if it's crossing state lines and involves fraud with a VA loan. That night, I stayed in my motel lounge with a beer, replaying everything in my head. I wondered if Amy had been conning me from day one, or if she just got caught up in Brian's scheme, and whether it mattered. My phone buzzed again, Amy texting. We have to talk in person. Meet me at Riverwalk Park tomorrow? I showed it to Robert over breakfast. Don't do it, he warned. Talking to her now won't help? I'm not going, I replied. But I do want to see what she's up to. We drove to the house around 9:30 a.m., parked across the street. Around 9:45, Amy came out, got in her car and left, presumably heading to Riverwalk Park. "And now?" Robert asked. "We wait." 20 minutes later, another car showed up with a realtor's logo on the door, Mark Atkins. Brian stepped out to greet him, and they both went inside. Robert asked if we should follow, but I shook my head. No need. I installed interior cameras. They back up to cloud storage. Robert raised an eyebrow. "Didn't mention that before." "Never came up," I said, pulling out my phone. I opened the security app and angled it so he could watch. Atkins and Brian were in the living room, Atkins snapping pictures while Brian pointed out the house's features. I turned up the volume. "We can list it by next week," Atkins was saying. "I've got an investor ready with cash. We'll start at $480, they'll come in at $430, and everyone's happy." "What about the husband?" Brian asked. "Amy said he's been messing around at the bank." Atkins shrugged it off. "Military guys are the same. They bark and threaten, but they have deployments, responsibilities. He'll take a buyout to make this go away." I glanced at Robert. "You recording this?" He was already capturing the footage on his phone, every word. I forwarded the camera feed to Agent Patel, the FBI contact Robert had found, with the note, "Happening now." Less than half an hour later, unmarked FBI cars and local police swarmed my property. Robert and I watched from down the street as agents escorted Atkins and Brian out in cuffs. My phone rang. It was Agent Patel. "We got them discussing the fraud right there on tape," she said. "Conspiracy, wire fraud, attempted sale under false pretenses. We'll need you to give a formal statement." "Of course," I replied, noticing Amy had just pulled up to the curb. She stood on the lawn with her hands over her face, watching agents haul boxes of documents out of our house. "What about my wife?" I asked quietly. "We're determining her involvement," Patel answered. "Did she know the full scope? Did she benefit from it? We'll see. And we'll also want to know what you want to do." I looked at Amy from a distance. I thought about the 13 years we shared. Good times, then the unraveling. "I just want what's right," I finally said. The federal case moved quickly. Brian and Atkins both cut plea deals, each pointing fingers at the other and revealing multiple associates in a 3-state scam that targeted military families. Amy insisted she had no clue about the broader plan and said Brian told her I was stashing money away, intending to abandon her with nothing. She claimed the refinance had been his idea from the start. Maybe she believed that. Maybe she was just covering herself. Regardless, she agreed to a settlement. Full restitution of my stolen funds, complete forfeiture of any claim on the house or my pension, and a signed confession about forging my signature. In return, I chose not to press additional charges. The divorce was finalized 6 months after that fateful email. No fault, clean break, all things considered. Shortly after the final paperwork, Agent Patel called. Brian got sentenced today. 8 years for fraud, conspiracy, and identity theft. Atkins got 12. Thought you'd want the update. Thanks, I said. One more thing, she added. They targeted 11 other families. Your case helped us trace the pattern, and those folks may get some restitution as well. I hung up and sat on the porch of my tiny rental, thinking of all those others who deployed believing everything was safe at home, only to find betrayal. I hadn't planned on bringing down Brian and Atkins' entire operation. I just wanted justice for myself. But sometimes life unfolds in unexpected ways. A few minutes later, my phone buzzed with a text from Amy. I never meant for it to end like this. I stared at the screen for a while, said nothing, and then deleted the message. Nothing left to say. A year later, I sold the Fresno house. I couldn't bear to live there anymore. Too many memories. I used the proceeds to buy a small cabin outside Bozeman, Montana. 2 bedrooms, 10 acres, a creek out back, no neighbors for miles. I took an early retirement after 20 years. I'd given enough to the Army. I adopted a German Shepherd named Duke, started doing carpentry jobs for locals, simple stuff. But it kept my hands busy. My pension covered the rest. Sometimes I'd think about Amy, where she went, if she ended up okay. Robert heard she'd gone back to her hometown in Oregon, got another administrative job in a dental practice, trying to rebuild. I didn't hate her anymore. Mostly, I felt nothing. She made her choices, and I made mine. One evening, I got a letter from a woman in New Mexico. Her husband was in the Navy, away on deployment, and Bryan and Atkins had attempted the same swindle on her. The FBI had given her my name as a reference in the case. "You don't know me," she wrote, "but you saved our home. Thank you for fighting back when it would have been easier to give up." I read that letter twice and pinned it to my fridge. On days when the loneliness felt too heavy or the memories cut too deep, I'd look at that note and remember that something good came out of all this. Last I heard, Bryan and Atkins were still serving their sentences. The system worked, for once. As for me, I'm healing at my own pace, one quiet day at a time. I'm building something new, something no one can forge, swindle, or take away, something that's mine alone.